Hello and welcome to the next Couch to Champion update. This will be the update for April. In this Couch to Champion episode, I really want to talk about burnout, how to recognize it, how to recover from it, and kind of rebuild a rhythm that you can actually maintain. Let's get into it. To start out with, I kind of want to talk about my personal burnout and the lack of motivation that I have felt. When the excitement fades, it's purpose that has to carry you. The fire, it always starts out bright. Starting something new always brings clarity and it brings confidence. The mission feels bold and it feels exciting, and you're fired up. You're ready to go. You're like, man, this is new. This is fun. I love it. You're full speed ahead. And I see it all the time. I experience it multiple times when I start something new. When every Christian gets into their new or develops a new faith, or they first start getting into the faith, they're always on fire, and they want to share it with the world, and they just want to, nothing can slow them down. And that was me in the beginning. At the beginning of the year in January, it was a new year. I changed the name of the podcast. It was a new name. I changed kind of the mission and the approach and the execution of that mission. So it was a new mission. And I had a fire in my chest. I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. I'm so excited to start launching this thing. I started out just doing interviews, and now I'm going to start talking, and sharing my story and sharing my experiences. And this is just, it was brand new. And I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. But the excitement always fades. Every time. Life gets in the way. Life happens. You get beat down. You realize that, there is something that can stop you. And it does. Without a clear vision, momentum can easily turn into burnout. And that's what happened to me. My progress started to become pressure. Metrics kind of start out as a tool, but they can kind of turn into traps. For me, tracking really started to become an obsession. I started really diving into the numbers, like views and likes, and as far as running, I was digging into pace and form and this and that, and obsessing over all of these numbers and all of these metrics that are important but not your God. And they just started kind of dragging me down, because I feel like that my self-worth was being dictated by the success or the failure of those numbers. So when they went down, I went down. I threw everything into this. Right out of the gate, I gave it my full energy and attention. And as things, always when you start something out, it's gonna succeed, because you're fired up, because you're throwing all your energy into it. But when the reality kicks in and you realize that you have other things, there are other things in life that are important, you start realizing how difficult it is to keep going. And that's what happened to me, honestly, truly. I really, like I said, I tied my worth into the numbers. One of the biggest things that I had to learn was you need to separate your effort from the outcome. Your identity, my identity, is not tied to the performance of this podcast or the performance even of my runs. That's not who I am. I had to make that association. I had to make that disassociation. The problem is that the reason that it's so important that you have to separate yourself from the performance, or you have to separate yourself from the success of the numbers, is because when progress stalls, your motivation is going to drop significantly. And I'm going to tell you now that everybody who's ever started anything, any business, any podcast, any YouTube channel, anything, is going to hit a wall at some point. They are going to plateau at some point. Read any biography, any point. There's a book that got me really involved and really excited about business, and that was Shoe Dogs by Phil Knight. He's the founder of Nike, and in his story, he talks about constant. There's like 3 or 4 times that things just hit the can, you know. But you're still gonna show up mentally, and you're still gonna show up physically, but your heart is detached. Like I was mentioning earlier, without the clear vision, you're not really sure where you're going. You're just there. You're going. And for me, that was, I would sit down and I would try to do this podcast, and mentally and physically I was here, but emotionally I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't excited about it like I was at first. And I kind of remember, lacing up for a run, and I was already like dreading it. I wasn't, I was just like, oh, I have to run again. There's that, I have to run again. I wasn't tired physically. I had enough energy. I had enough fuel, but I was drained mentally. And what it showed me is that sometimes the answer isn't more effort, it's realignment. You're not broken. You're just tired. This kind of hit, for me, a wake-up call. You fix burnout by remembering who you were before you got tired. Rest is strategy. Rest is so vitally important to your success. I didn't want to stop on this podcast. I didn't want to quit, because I felt like if I quit, then I gave up on everything, or I abandoned everybody, or I abandoned myself, but my body forced me to. In March, my knee flared up, and I had no choice but to rest. I couldn't really do much on it. It hurt so bad that, if I ran, it would just shoot pain signals up my legs. If I lifted, I couldn't really do, squats or deadlifts or things like that put heavy weight on my leg or my knee. So it really cut pretty much everything I do out. And I had to take a break. I had to. There was no other choice, or I'd keep hurting myself or making it worse. And I'll admit, at first I hated the break. I was like, man, this freaking sucks. It wasn't my ideal. I felt like I wasn't giving my all. And again, during this time, I was also, again, showing up to this podcast mentally and showing up physically, and just not there. My heart wasn't in it. My heart wasn't in the podcast, and my heart wasn't even in the running. I'd really gotten slumped and gotten super low because I felt like that, the numbers weren't hitting where I would prefer them to be. And I hated the break at first, like I said. I hated waiting. I hated having to stop. I felt like because I was waiting, then I was just reversing all my progress. But honestly, that's not true. In that time off, it really gave me room and time to recenter, which I needed to do. Stillness reveals what business hides. We need rest, not an escape. We need rest, not as an escape, but as part of the rhythm of life. The Lord talks about all the time in the Bible, rest. You need rest. Take time and rest. Sometimes you have to rest on the Lord. Rest in the Spirit. Rest is so vitally key, because without rest, you don't refocus. Without rest, you don't breathe. You don't take time to stop and smell the roses. You lose the passion. The passion starts to suffocate because you're so wrapped up in the process, because you're so, you're going so hard so fast, and you don't recover. One of the biggest key things to help your workouts and help your running and help anything like that is to take a day or take a period of several days and rest, recover. Recovery and rest is so vitally key, mentally and physically. Another thing that really kind of helped me was I leaned on my counsel. So what's a counsel? We're not meant to do hard things alone. So I reached out to some people that I really trust and that I can share deep things with. And they told me what I needed to hear, not exactly what I wanted to hear. And they kind of told me that, or they helped me realize that I was doing too much. If you were around or following me during that period, I was putting out shorts daily. I was, you know, really getting after it. Every day there was something new. Every day there was something going. And, I did not breathe. I was posting consistently, constantly, which, isn't bad, but it was wearing me out. And I didn't realize that. And as things, the more I suffocated my audience, the more that I felt suffocated. The more that I started realizing that this ain't working, and the people that I talked to helped me realize that as well. I realized that trying to keep everything as it was wearing me out. It was going to wear me to the point where I was going to burn out. I did burn out. Talking a little bit about your counsel. What is a counsel? Well, you need to have people in your circle that challenge your internal lies and remind you of your worth. You have to have people who, when you're too overwhelmed to see it on your own, they share and they make you realize that, this is what's going on. They are third party outside perspectives, flies on the wall, that tell you the truth and aren't afraid to tell you the truth. They have to be people that aren't afraid to tell you the truth, because if they tell you what you want to hear, you're not going to learn from it. You're not going to grow from it. Hard truths make real change. So, your counsel, even the Lord talks about having a counsel, having advisors, having people in your corner who add ideas, who add suggestions, who talk to you. So I will highly suggest that, find those people, even if it's one or two people or one at all. Find people in your life that you can count on, that you can counsel with. They are your counsel. So moving on a little bit to, or redirecting back to kind of what was going on during this period, this was kind of the wake-up call for me, talking to these people and realizing that, hey, dude, you're out there, you're giving everything, but you're giving too much, more than you're able to capably handle. And I kind of had to redefine the grind. Success isn't performance, it's purpose lived out daily. So I had to remind myself, I didn't sign up to this race to prove anything. I signed up to become something better. My motivation starting all of this to begin with, the podcast, the race, all these things, was, my vision was I wanted to inspire, empower, and encourage people. And that's what happens. And on the other hand, I also wanted to inspire, empower, and encourage myself. I wanted to grow. I wanted to discipline myself. I wanted to be somebody who is disciplined. I wanted to be better. And everything that I'm doing, everything that I started, was to achieve that vision. And I had to really kind of take a step back and say, hang on, Ethan, you're overdoing this. You're putting too much out. You're drowning your audience. Your audience isn't, there is such thing as too much. Less is more. I do believe that. And I lost sight of that. And it kind of, what happened, and again, this is all going on during my break in March. And, I kind of had to realign and readjust to the point where I cut a lot of stuff out. Now, I do still post consistently. I do still have probably at least an episode a week. There may be a week I don't. And I do still post shorts and things like that, but I've significantly drawn it back. And again, I do run still. But I've significantly drawn it back to the point where I really redefine what it is that works. I don't need to post every single day to have success. On the other hand, the success of the posts do not define me. They are not me. I am not the success of the posts. The success of the posts are simply a metric to help you see what is and what isn't working, and you adjust and change as you go along. But, if it does really good, then maybe do stuff like that in the future. If it does really bad, maybe don't do that in the future. And it depends, because your audience is going to change too. People in your corner, people who are supporting you, they're going to change from here and there. People who start with you may not end with you. It all, you got to realize that. And so you have to understand that things, when you take a step back and look, really look, you know, not everything needs to be there. Steve Jobs was an amazing example of this. When he got brought back into the corner after he had got let go from Apple, and he got returned back as the CEO of Apple, he cut everything out, just about, till I think it was like maybe one or two products that they sold at that point. After he cut everything out, he said, we don't need to be making all of this stuff if all of this stuff isn't working. Focus on the things, the products, the things that you're really good at and that really work, and put all your energy into those, even if it's only a few things. You need to look at what you're good at, look at what you're capable of. I enjoy running, and I talked about this a lot in the podcast episode with John. I said I lost the passion for running. I stopped enjoying running, and that was where the problem started, because joy isn't something that you gain when you win. Joy is the foundation that you build on. And if you're not enjoying it, then your foundation is crumbled and nothing else is going to grow. So I love podcasting just because I love podcasting. I love running because I love running. And as I mentioned in John's episode, I also enjoyed CrossFit. CrossFit was what got me into the gym circle to begin with, and I lost sight of that. I lost that along the way. I started kind of focusing on other things, and then those other things didn't fulfill me as much as the CrossFit used to. And so now, realizing that, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to bring that back. Maybe I need to, what started as my foundational joys need to be reinserted into my daily routine, because joy has to be at the center. So what's changing? What's new? I'm still chasing growth. Don't forget, and don't undermine the fact that I am still chasing growth, as any good leader or any good creator would. But I'm doing it at a pace that I can sustain, because I am a solo act. I'm doing everything. So I have to keep it at a level that I can handle. And I'm letting the journey fulfill me. And the results, they speak for themselves. Joy is the foundation, passion is the gas, and vision is the destination. So what do I mean by that? The biggest thing that I'm doing, and honestly the only thing that I'm really doing, is I'm simplifying the routine. What that means is I cut back the noise. Not every run needs a tracker, and not every lift needs a PR. There's a lot of people out there that lift weights that don't know what their PR is. I don't even know what my PR is, but I also don't care, because it's not about that to me. That is simply a metric that you can look at and say, wow, what an accomplishment. Last week, my PR was 185 pounds on a deadlift. This week it's now, or not week, it will never be a week, but now my PR, after say a year of doing it, is 225. What an accomplishment. You can use that as a motivation tactic to help you see the progress that you've been making. As I said in the beginning, we don't often see progress, but when I started running, I ran without a watch on. I ran with just music in and the breeze. That's all I needed. And I wasn't worried about how fast I was going. I wasn't worried about how my form looked or anything like that. I just ran because I like to run. Now, counteracting that a little bit, form is important, and I am trying to learn to have better form, but I'm trying to do it in a way that to become more natural for me to have good form. I'm training myself to have good form naturally. Like when I do a deadlift, I automatically have great form. I don't think about it. I don't try. I just do, because I've done it so long now the right way that it's a natural movement for me. it feels natural to do it that right way. So I'm making it to where running is the same way, but I'm not obsessing over it. If I don't do it right all the time, I'm not beating myself up anymore. I'm just saying, okay, well, we need to make a slight adjustment. And I'm just training myself to enjoy running. The last run that I did in April, and April was another one of those months. April was really the month that I've started kind of doing all of this rebuilding, this resurfacing, realigning, things like that. So I haven't worked out a lot in April, which is why I'm not really talking about it much, even though it is kind of supposed to be an episode about April. I'm really just talking about the burnout that I had in March, and then the resurfacing, the rebuilding, the things I've learned along the way through the month of April. And then May, this upcoming month, is really going to be the implementation and the shift and the change. And I'm going to start rebuilding my routines, and really you're going to start seeing more going on then. Maybe not more posts, but definitely more progress. And anyway, getting back on track, when I ran last time, all I did was I still have my watch. I always still want to track, certain things. I want to see my progress, but I put in music. I just ran the track. The breeze of the day. I just put in music and I said, all right, I want to cut off my running at 6:45. That's when I want to stop running. And from the second that I walked out onto that track till 6:45, I just listened to the music and ran. And it felt absolutely amazing. When I did my last deadlift, I actually cut the weight down. And my reps were more slow and steady, and I focused more on making that rep count than I did on lifting the most amount of weight I could. Because earlier, before that, I was trying to, every week I was increasing the weight to the point where I was actually starting to hurt myself because I was overdoing it. I was trying to ego lift a little bit, and that was affecting me. And so I said, okay, I don't need to ego lift. I need to focus on getting the maximum amount of effort, or the maximum amount of growth I can out of this one rep. And man, I felt amazing after that workout. I felt like I really actually accomplished something. So not every run needs a tracker, and not every lift needs a PR. They are there to help you see your progress, but they should never be something that you live and die on. It is not the end of the world if you don't do as good as you did last time. It doesn't matter, because you cannot gauge success on the numbers. You just can't. Success is simply the mentality. Am I achieving what I set out to achieve? Here's my opinion. I classify myself as a successful podcaster. Why? I don't have 100,000 subscribers. I don't even have 100 subscribers. I don't have 1 million followers on Instagram. I don't have 1 million followers on Facebook. But what I do have is, I said that I was going to do a podcast, and I am now doing a podcast. I have succeeded. And now, after I've succeeded, every method, every step I take, and after this, is to help grow that and to help build that, to help that success be more impactful for other people. Your gifts are always for other people. And when I run this race, whether I win or not, running it is success. I said I'm going to run a race. I'm running a 5K. I am telling the world and myself I am setting out to run a 5K. If I run that 5K, whether I win or not, if I run that 5K, I am successful. Because success is measured by accomplishing the things you set out to do. That is success, not by the numbers. Don't get lost in the numbers, and don't let the numbers become your God, because I've been there, and it only increases the risk of burnout. Slow down, breathe, enjoy it. That's the key to success. Slow down, breathe, and enjoy it. So I am going back a little bit with my workouts. What made me fall in love with fitness? The AMRAPs, the EMOMs, the CrossFit type stuff. I love doing that. I love getting my heart rate up, and it's just fun to me. I like the high energy, high intensity. I am ADHD, so that's probably why. But you know, it's just things that I like to do. It's fun to me. That's probably why I like running. You know, I like the thrill. I like the adrenaline rush you get when you're on a time limit and you know you gotta get things done in a certain time limit and your heart's racing and it's just fun. I enjoy it. It's fun. So I'm gonna start incorporating that a little bit more. And I did talk about it a little bit in the episode with John, and I highly suggest you go check out those episodes. There's a fantastic conversation about, you know, everything that I'm kind of preaching in this episode, which is why I'm not really going too deep in this episode, because a lot of it is really up to you to decide. You know, this is what worked for me, but for you, you know, you just need to look at your life, look at your routines, look at your habits, look at your goals, and see what can I cut out, what doesn't need to be there, what's really just wearing me down, and what's actually helping me grow. So you know, training should recharge you, not drain you. Less is more. That's the key to staying consistent. You know, when you work out, you should feel good about working out. It should make you feel better, not make you feel worse. And if it's making you feel worse, then there's something wrong. Even training for this stuff, you know, the more and more that I do this stuff, I should be getting better. I should be feeling better. I should be, you know, progress. I should be making progress. And I am. You know, ever since I cut out all the fluff, so to speak, my videos have been performing better. I've been getting more views. The algorithms have been pushing it more because I'm focusing on the quality of the content, not the quantity. Quantity will get you nowhere. Quality is what matters. When people watch a video, even if it sucks, it's about the message. It's about what you're trying to teach. You know, even this episode, it's not really got a good framework. I've realized talking about this and recording this episode currently that I haven't really mentioned burnout much, but everything, and I haven't really talked about, you know, my journey in April or anything like that. It's kind of just been me talking. But if you get something out of the message, then to me that is successful. Not if this message gets out to 400 million people. You know, everything that you do is to build a better you. Another thing that I changed is, you know, following my less is more concept. You know, earlier I talked about overwhelming and drowning my audience, and you know, I was putting a lot out there, and people were getting irritated. Not irritated at me, or not irritated because I have a lot of stuff out there. They just weren't watching it. They didn't care. Nobody cared because, you know, oh, it's another thing, or you know, it was too much. There was too much, honestly, and so that kind of made me realize that I needed to make this podcast shift into the direction of what it originally was built for. What made this podcast matter? Real conversations, real stories, and real growth. That's my foundation for this podcast. You know, I'm going to be leaning into a little bit more in my interviews again and really focusing on making those interviews really impactful and matter. And the personal stories that I'm sharing, you know, the Couch to Champion series and the reviews I'm doing on the Beyond the Gear series, those are really more now for not me just talking, but really helping you understand and realize and learn from the things that I am learning as I go along the way. And the reviews, you know, they're there to help you see and understand and learn from the products. You know, is it really working? Is it really not? Help you develop your own opinions. You know, when I started doing this, and this was the beginning of April, when I implemented all this, you know, the podcast and the journey, it felt fun again like it used to. You know, I had a blast. And being honest and upfront, it gave me a new energy, a second wind, so to speak. You know, I feel better about recording this stuff now. Today, when I came in here to record, I was excited again. And I felt like, you know, this is really going to matter now. You know, not only that, it's going to help my message be presented better anyway, because my heart is in the words that I'm saying just as much as my mind and my physical body are here as well. You know, I'm pouring out not just my knowledge, but my experience and my passion. And you guys are seeing that. So when you learn to slow down and shift the focus to making an impact with each post, not meeting a quota, it's going to resonate better. People don't just hear you at that point. They connect with you on a deeper level because, like I said, people respond to passion. People recognize the heart in everything that you're putting out there. Every short that I've been putting out from learning this on has been strategically selected because of the message that it gives out, not just because it's another short that I can put out, and that has made it so much better. People, I've grown very small, but I have, had some increase because of that increase in views and even an increase in people following, which is amazing. That's what this is here for, so that people learn. So I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. Not to the point where I'm going to burn myself out again and repeat the process, but I'm excited about it, but I'm also giving myself time to do other things and enjoy other things that I enjoy. I'm doing this because I enjoy it now rather than I'm doing it because I want to grow and build a business. I do have a full-time job, and to be honest, I don't really need the money. So I can give my heart into this and not worry about anything else. So I've got a little formula that I use to kind of help you avoid burnout or recoup from burnout. So first step is to stop, recognize the signs. Don't wait until you crash out. Notice when the weight starts to feel heavier than usual. For me, it was, March. I started really feeling like, God, I didn't want to be here. I was only here doing it because I had to. It wasn't because I wanted to. That's when you'll notice when it starts feeling heavy, and when it starts feeling like, this isn't working. I have to. It just becomes a drag at that point. So stop. Recognize the signs. Normally, it's resistance or dread or heaviness or things like that. Next step is to rest. Step away with intention, whether it's a full break for a month or a week, a lighter week. Just allow your mind and your body time to recover. Nobody who works out ever works out 6 to 7 days a week. If they do, then they're not doing it right. Always take time to rest. Always take time to recoup. Breathe. You have to breathe a little, because if you don't, you're going to burn out, like I mentioned earlier. So rest is vitally important. Mental rest, physical rest, even spiritual rest. Rest in the Lord. Let him speak to you. Let him download. It doesn't always have to be you offloading. Let him download. And just enjoy the silence a little bit. Breathe. Next step is to reevaluate. Look at what's working and what's not working. Is your pace sustainable? Is it something that you can keep up with for a long period of time? When I approach a deadlift, how I select my weight is, can I lift this weight for 12 reps in a row? It has nothing to do with what is my PR. It has nothing to do with, how much weight can I lift any day of the week. It's how do I feel right now, and can I sustain that? Can I lift that weight for 12 reps and not burn myself out? So focus on your pace. Is it sustainable? Is it working? If it's not, you don't need it. Or slow it down or cut it back. And is it aligned with your vision? Is it going to help you get to the end result? Is it going to help you get to that vision? Is it going to propel you forward, or is it just there because it's something that you added for the heck of it? Everything that you're doing has to drive you further towards your vision, towards your goals. So reevaluate. And lastly, revamp. Adjust the plan. Come back with a smarter rhythm, a clearer focus, and an easier process. Change your systems. Like I did. Instead of putting out a short every day, now I put one out maybe a few times a week. If even that, maybe only 2 a week. I cut it way back. I really only do 1 episode a month, or a week rather. Again, if I don't, I don't. It's okay. It's okay to not do things sometimes if you just need a break. Just make sure you come back to it. But adjust the plan, Take what's working and make it sustainable. Have a smarter process, have a smarter rhythm, and have a clear focus. Make it easier. So keep coming back to this cycle. Stop, rest, reevaluate, and revamp. It's never going to be a quick fix, but it is going to be a sustainable rhythm for growth and for recovery. And it applies to more than just overcoming burnout. It applies to life as a whole. You need to learn to stop, rest, reevaluate, and revamp in anything that you do. You know, sometimes taking the step back is what you need to help you take the next step forward. You know, everything is always going to lead you to the next level. So use this cycle however you see fit. If it doesn't work for you, or if you want to add steps, or if you want to adjust it, go for it. You know, but this is just what I've learned, what works for me, that I've kind of learned over the course of April. So to finish things up and wrap things up and finish things out, there we go. You know, burnout doesn't mean that you failed. Yeah, everybody burns out everywhere. Any creator, for any podcast, for any video, for any YouTube channel, for anything, any entrepreneur, anybody who's doing anything has faced burnout at least once in their life. And if they haven't, they're fixing to. It doesn't mean that you failed. It means that you gave it your all, and now it's time to get back to yourself. You know, you need to take time to restore and replenish. It is okay to slow down and fall in love with the process. The process, again, is what growth is all about. The journey is always more important than the end result. So slow down and remember why you're doing it to begin with. Fall in love with the process, not the end result. You know, give yourself grace to rest. Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't eat the whole elephant all at once. Slow down and rest. Take it in chunks. Take it little by little. You will get there eventually. Give yourself time. Give it time. Building up and stacking growth, quality content, quality progress is what makes you successful. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I know it's a little different than my usual Couch to Champion episodes. I am going to be back out there on the track for the month of May. It's been kind of wet and rainy, so this April, so the track has been a little less of my main focus. I've been doing a lot of treadmill stuff, but actually, which is good because the treadmill stuff actually helps me dial in my form a little bit, because I kind of restrict myself to a box and I have to run right. So, you know, wherever I was going with this. Oh yeah. So, you know, if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed this series so far, please give me some feedback. Let me know what you guys think. How I can improve this in the future. And I'm always looking to do things better. I'm always looking for suggestions. I'm always looking for, you know, feedback. So feel free to let me know. I welcome it. As always, you know, stay motivated, stay encouraged, and chase every mile. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.